Welcome to my studio. I'm going to start measuring the space now. So I have a sketchbook and a pencil, and basically what I'm going to do is walk around the perimeter that I can reach, and marking how many steps I take as I go along. And this is going to include where all of these objects and other things are placed in my room because those aren't moving. So my workable space exists within that. Okay, time to measure. Okay, so there you have it. This is going to be the basic start for what I'm going to use to generate a 3D model. And I basically made a mark every step that I took, and that's what I'm going to use to translate into the units that are available in my drawing and modeling programs. Okay, so now we're in Illustrator, and what I'm going to do is use this line tool here. I'm going to change my stroke weight to 0.1, and I'm basically just going to start drawing out those lines. So if I click on my artboard, I can see this box come up that asks me what the length and what the angle of my line is going to be. So I'm going to enter 8. We're in centimeters, and I'm going to be, I believe, going at 90 degrees for my first line. All right, so that's my first line, and I'm just going to continue until I have a completed drawing. Okay, so we're seeing here, right, that my drawing is not lining up with itself. And I'm just going to highlight this and change the stroke weight so that we can see that a little bit better. So you can see, right, this is not super precise. That's okay. I'm going to continue making the drawing the way it is right now, and then kind of decide how I'm going to change it. This could be, this imprecision is due to probably a couple different things, but one thing that my steps are not taking into account, for example, is the width of my foot, which is going to change my measurements depending on where I align my heel to my toes when I'm taking steps. It also may be because of the angles that I'm choosing, right? I'm doing 45 and 90 degree angles, and I may have actually been walking different angles, right? So that's okay. Like I said, I'm gonna complete the drawing and then justify it to a way that I think makes sense, and then we're gonna use that to make our model. Okay, so we've got that all set. These lines are not grouped together, So I am going to play around with changing their size a little bit and kind of see what happens. Look what happens if we do this. Oh. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm selecting all of my lines and changing their scale. I'm just trying to get these kind of close. You know, this again does not need, for my purposes, to be perfect, but it gives me an idea of what I'm working with. Okay, so I'm going to do this here, and do this here, and we're going to call that pretty good. Okay, so to fill this in and make this a solid shape, which is what I wanted, I am going to go to Object with my paths selected, Path, Join, and now I have myself a solid shape. So I am going to export this as an SVG, bring it into Tinkercad, and extrude it into a form. Okay, so here I am in Tinkercad. If you haven't used Tinkercad before, it's a really simple, user-friendly modeling program for making 3D models. It's web-based, so it's pretty easy to access. I have my grid here, which I'm going to load my model onto, and I've edited my grid to be able to fit the object and be in the units that I want. So that grid has already been updated. This up here is the file name. I'm going to change the name to room extrusion. Okay, and then there's a lot of things that you can do with Tinkercad. We have, for contemporary practices students on our Canvas page, a workshop for that you can use. There's also tutorials on here that you can use to get familiar with the program. I'm just going to show you this one function for the purposes of this exercise. So I'm going to click on Import 3D Files. I'm going to choose my file, which is my SVG right here. I'm going to open it, hit import, and there you go, right? I have a partially extruded model of my room right here. And now I can kind of decide like what I want to do with this. I'm going to just kind of like nudge this so that it's in the center of my grid. And what I really want to do, the way that I want to see this finalized, is to change the dimensions so that it's kind of a solid. So this is going to be my model. I like how this turned out. I'm going to, if you want, you can change the color. I would like this to be black. And then once I have what I want, you can export this file. So I'm going to click export. You can export it as an SVG. We already have the SVG. You can export it as an OBJ or an STL. I'm going to export this as an STL because hopefully in the future I can get access to a 3D printer and I can 3D print this.